everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be doing my February wrap up. So, number one, the brightness is really funky on this and I'm trying to fix it and it just didn't fix it. So, number two, ignore the pile of crap all over my bed. Number three, I'm gonna keep this pretty short because once again, like last month, I'm probably gonna leave out or do like really short mini reviews of books that I've already spoken about, so it's not gonna be long. Also, I just realized I don't have any of my stats with me. I'll be back. Also, I'll mention it briefly here. I did like a little challenge for myself in February where I just wanted to read at least like a chapter a day, every day, and I did really well. There was only 3 days of the month that I didn't read anything, so like pretty good. So in February I read 4,183 pages across 9 books. I listened to 46.3 hours of audiobooks. Again, I usually listen on 3 times speed, so divide by 3. I read 1 erotic horror, 3 dark romances, and then the rest were fantasy. 1 was audio, 4 were ebooks, 2 were physical, and 2 were a mix of audio and physical. 7 were intended for adults and 2 were intended for a YA audience. I gave 1 book 1 star, 1 book 2 star, 2 books 3 star, 4 books 4 star, and 1 book 5 stars. And that gives me an average rating of 3.33. I also don't actually have like basically any of the books with me, so I'm gonna have to put the pictures up. The first book that I read was Satan's Affair by H.D. Carlton, and this is a 200-ish, 187 pages if we're going to be specific. Erotic horror. I read it in my dark romance reading vlog, and it takes place at this like traveling carnival kind of thing, and she kills bad people because she can smell it, and then she has minions and she does it with them a lot. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Like, it was just like, number one, it was poorly written, and like it technically did what it was supposed to do, and it also like it finished, like the ending was interesting, but it was so weird. It was so uncomfortable. I think my reaction to it in the vlog was pretty entertaining, so as I said, I will leave that link down below. So then the next book that I read in that vlog was There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark, and I gave that a 3 out of 5 stars. So this one follows a serial killer, and he basically becomes obsessed with this girl and kind of starts to stalk her, and then, you know, they kind of start to fall for each other. It's strange. This one is actually like, it's really well written and it is very engaging, fast-paced, and I did think the characters are interesting, but it just isn't my kind of dark romance. I kind of discovered in that vlog that my kind of dark romance is where dark things are happening, or maybe like one of the characters is doing bad things, but they're not necessarily doing bad things to the other person in the relationship. And in this one, obviously he is stalking her, so I just didn't really feel it. And even besides that, I just didn't really feel any chemistry between the two of them until like really close to the end, so it didn't really do it for me. And also I did feel like the plot, it was mostly set up for the second book, which I'm probably not gonna read, but we'll see. Next book that I read was Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This was my favorite of the dark romances that I read, and this one follows I literally cannot remember any of these characters' names, but we follow a woman and she has never gotten along with her sister's fiance. They have always like been bickering and arguing and playing pranks on each other and all of this, and one day she and I think is it the sister's birthday party or something like that, she ends up staying late at the bar and she ends up calling him for a ride home, and then the two of them get kidnapped, and then basically the whole point of this kidnapper is he tries to make people fall in love with each other and then he kills them. And then obviously they escape, and so a lot of the book, the first portion of the book is following them as they like are going through this whole ordeal, and the rest of it is them trying to deal with their feelings because they're obviously not supposed to love each other because, you know, sister's fiance. And then obviously just trying to survive and all of that. And I really enjoyed it. I like completely like just so engaged, like I was in it and I was like so absorbed, and I really like the writing style. I really like the characters. They were very messy, but they felt very real, and you could totally understand. You like sometimes you did want to like just shake them and be like, why are you being like this? But like it was completely understandable why they were being like this. I think the author did a very good job with that, of like being like, they're doing bad things, but like it's understandable, but like not unforgivable, and pretty good balance of it. And I did, and this, as I said, this is kind of more the dark romance that I think I'm into, where obviously like pretty bad things happen to the two of them, but they're not necessarily, you know, trying to kill each other. I'm really fuzzy about romance anyway, so like a 3 or a 4 star from a romance book is really good for me. So but there was like just a couple of sentences here or there that would just completely take me out of the story, and I'd be like, why did you need to say that? And it was just like things like, I'm trying to think, like kind of characters who like we thought were a certain way all along, all of a sudden saying a sentence that was like really weird, and then like it never getting touched on again, and they go back to being like their normal selves, and it's like that doesn't fit with what we know about them. So it was just kind of that kind of bothered me, and it only happened a couple of times, but it like took me out of the story, and I still overall enjoyed it. Obviously I give it 4 stars, so I really enjoyed it, and I do recommend. And then the last book that I read for that vlog was Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton again, and this, I honestly can't tell you a plot, because while there is one, there also isn't one. And I gave this 1 out of 5 stars. I hated this book. I hated it. It is poorly written. The characters are horrible. Like, do you realize how bad it is that like I would preferred the serial killer who did not care about anything to this dude who like is a vigilante. Like, yes, he's also technically a serial killer, I guess, but he kills bad people, and yet I still hated him more than I hated the guy from There Are No Saints. Oh my god, I hated him. He was the worst. He was the worst. Also, Adeline was also the worst. I also could not stand her. She was so annoying, but like she also didn't really have much personality. Like, this book was way too long. It was like almost 600 pages. Absolutely not. And it was so messy. That is literally the only way I can describe it. Messy. And it needed like a whole reworking for it to make any sense, and for it to actually be enjoyable to me. And then the next 2 books, again, I'm not going to talk about these for too long either, because again, they are in a vlog, and it was my Colourthon vlog, and again, I will leave that link down below. So the first one I read was Empire of Ivory by Naim Novik, which is the 4th book in the Temeraire series. And I read this for Animal Friend prompt, and the Temeraire series follows Captain Will Lawrence and a dragon called Temeraire, and Captain Lawrence used to be a captain in the navy, and then they get into a skirmish with the French ship, and they take a dragon's egg as their reward basically, and then this dragon's egg starts to hatch, and Will basically ends up forming a bond with the dragon, and the books just follow them as they are like kind of doing small things to help the war effort against Napoleon. And I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It's not my favorite of the books. I'm trying to be honest, they're all kind of blurring together at this point, so I'm trying to remember which book this is. Okay, it was my 3rd favorite, so, or 2nd least favorite. So yeah, so not my favorite one, but still 4 stars, still solid. These really are mostly character driven books, I would say, but I just really have a good time with them. Like, that's the only way I can describe them. Like, I just sit down and I'm really absorbed in them, and I just have a good time. It's very hard to talk about 4th book in the series. So then the next book I read, again for the Colourthon vlog, and I think it was maybe a cold cover or something, or snow on the cover or something like that. I can't remember what the exact prompt was, but that was A Shiver of Snow and Sky by Lisa Ludecki, I think is the author's name. And this one I gave you 4 out of 5 stars. And this follows Osa, and in their village, there are every so often lights appear in the sky. So blue will mean snow is coming, green means all is well, and red means that something bad is coming, or the plague is coming. And the last time the red lights appeared, a whole lot of people died, including Osa's mother. And then Osa's, I think 16 or 17, and the lights appear, and she wants to do everything in her power to make sure that nobody dies this time. And so she heads off to the mountain to try and speak to the goddess. And then we also get the perspective of her best friend Ivar, and he is staying behind in the village to try and prepare, because there might be a war coming for them. And okay, so this one, again, I'm not going to dwell on it too long because I've spoken about it, but I do think that the audiobook really enhanced my experience because I already, like, I'm like, I can't remember a single thing that happened in this book. So the audiobook did really enhance my enjoyment, and I do definitely recommend it. I think the narrator has a very nice voice. And I did prefer Isar's point of view. I thought that he was very interesting. He was a very sweet and kind character, and like, just, he was the only one that seemed to actually like stick up for Osa and other people, and I enjoyed that. And but towards the end of the book, he definitely got less and less perspectives, and it became more about Osa. And the magic system just wasn't really explained, and it was kind of like just shoved in there at the end, and I was like, I don't really get the point. And I did enjoy the writing style though, and I did enjoy the atmosphere and like that snowy feeling, all of that. Overall, enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 stars. So that only leaves 3 books that I'm going to actually properly talk about, and even then, like, I'm probably not even going to talk about them that long. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. I don't almost forget who wrote this. It's very shiny. Anyway, so this is like the collector's edition, and I did also watch the live show that she did for it, which I also realized that I actually could have gone to Dublin to go to the live show because I didn't have college the next day. But oh well. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars, and I'm not gonna lie, that was probably generous. I think so. If you've already read this SCRIBD series, including this book, I'm gonna leave a link down below, Mare Reads video, where she goes into spoiler. If you go into the comments, you will see me ranting about it and everything that I disliked about it. So I'm gonna leave that linked down below because I feel like it pretty well captures my feelings. She had pretty similar feelings to me about the book in general, so I'm going to leave that link down below because I think it was a good video. I'm going to take the dust jacket off just for now because it's very shiny and none of us need that. So this is the 3rd and final book in the Last Hours trilogy, which is like her 4th Shadowhunter series, but it is the 2nd chronologically. And so it follows the children of the characters in the Infernal Devices, and in the first book they have lived a perfectly peaceful childhood. Obviously they're still Shadowhunters, so, you know, training for demons and all of that, but then really strange demon attacks keep happening, and they're able to do things like go out in the sunlight, which they shouldn't be able to do. And so the whole group, they kind of band together to try and figure out why this is happening. So I'm going to actually read, I think, my Goodreads review, which is actually pretty long. Like, I was just typing away on my phone. I had a lot of thoughts. Basically, the bottom line is like disappointed, and it just didn't feel like Cassandra Clare, because even I've said this is I know that I'm growing out of her books. I'm still going to finish the Shadowhunter Chronicles, you betcha, but I am growing out of her books. I'm aware of that. But even when the past, like, because I've noticed that in Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron, but even with the 2 of those, yes, I had like some objective problems with those books, but I still had that sense of nostalgia and like comfort and like familiarity while reading those books, even though they were completely new stories. I mean, it's just all of her stuff is recycled at this point, but they still feel that you still get that familiar feeling. And in this, yes, some stuff that has happened before happened again, which annoyed me. I'm trying not to be spoilery, but it didn't even feel the same as it usually does. And I don't know what that was about. And I also found that it was a lot slower to read than usual. Usually her writing style is just really quick and easy, and it just, like, you know, grabs you in and you just fly through her books, even if they are this big. And that just was not the case this time. So this is the 2nd time in a row that the final book in one of these series has been such a letdown. This and Queen of Air and Darkness both dragged and were full of unnecessary drama and character changes. The finales used to be my favorite books in these series, but not anymore. It wasn't terrible, and overall I think it made sense, but I'm growing really tired of the same formula, but slightly changed. Love triangle, forbidden romance, character deaths for shock that doesn't actually add any value to the plot, miscommunication, and the way the main guy was defeated was eerily similar to something that has happened twice before. I remember when I first heard that this was going to be a series, I was so excited, and still actually a teen. I remember reading the short story in the Bane Chronicles and already falling in love with James. Then came the Shadowhunter Academy, and I loved the friendship between these boys. And there was also the Shadow Market, and I adored even more backstory. But then, by the time the series finally arrived, I think the moment had passed for me. I feel like the characters had completely changed from those stories. There was no development of Cordelia and Lucy's friendship when I had been so excited to finally get a pair of women parabatai, and as I mentioned before, I'm completely over the formula. I had problems with the previous books, but also there were elements that I absolutely adored. Even the parts of the stories that I had liked in the first two books didn't bother me in this. I loved learning about Grace's backstory, and that she was fascinating to read about whether you loved her or hated her, or in between. I didn't care about her in this. I was squealing over Lucy in the second book, honestly thought they were going to be one of the best ships she had ever written, and in this, there was nothing. I really wish I loved this because these books meant the world to me when I was young, but unfortunately, I feel like I'm growing up. And yeah, that is just, isn't that so sad? Growing up. There are spoilery things that really bother me, which again, I can't really go into, but number one, she went back on something that she had said in a previous book. In the Clockwork Princess epilogue, let's just say there's a character there that should not be there, according to this book. And that's all I will say about it. And I was very annoyed, and the way it was handled was very poor. I think that's like as vague as I can get it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm so afraid to ever reread The Infernal Devices again. And I used to reread it like, I used to read that and The Mortal Instruments. All my reading basically from the age of like 12 to 16 was basically reread The Mortal Instruments and The Infernal Devices. And then maybe like maybe like 5 other new books. And that was my reading for the year. So it was just a constant cycle of rereading those, plus a couple of new ones. And then I got introduced to Bookstagram, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna read more books. A part of me really wants to reread The Infernal Devices because that is just like, I still call it my favorite series of all time. Because it is the epitome of nostalgic and like childhood and, you know, teenagehood, whatever. Like, that is it for me. And so I reread it before Chain of Woe came out, so in 2020, and I cried. I bawled. And that was actually one of my first attempts of a booktube video. I was going to film a vlog of me reading those, but then I got so absorbed in them that I didn't film anything. Read them all and I gave them 5 stars when I reread them, but now I'm like, am I old? Do I not like these anymore? So I can't, so like one part of me really wants to reread them and be like, do I still enjoy this? And the other part of me is like, you don't want to reread this because if the answer is no, you don't still enjoy this, a little part of you will die. So then the 8th book that I read that last month was The House of Always by Jen Lyons, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It's my first 5-star of the year. Oh my god. Also, I have already read the final book in series, which was also 5. I loved it. And I actually don't even think I can tell you a lot about this because it's the 4th book in the series, but also I think it'll just be incoherent rambling of me being like, I love them. And again, most of the reasons why I love it are probably considered spoilers, so yeah. So this series follows Kieran, and at the start of the story, he is in a kind of prison. There's another person in there called Talon, and Talon basically tells him to tell his like story, and so he starts saying about how he was basically sold into slavery and then taken to this island and trained and all of this. And Talon tells him that no, that is not where his story starts, and she starts telling his story from a couple of years previous when he was being raised by his adoptive father in a brothel, and he was also a thief on the side, and one day he broke into the wrong house and there was a demon there. After he escaped from this demon, he ends up getting claimed as the lost son of one of these royal houses, and then eventually these two timelines meet and we see him in the present day, and we find out that everyone kind of wants a piece of Kieran because he might be destined to destroy the empire. And oh my god, we have come so far from there. It's so good. Read this series. So, number 1, The Memory of Souls. The way that ended, like, I knew I had to read this. And I was saving it because I was like, okay. Because basically I was like, Cassidy, we can buddy read it. And then Cassidy did not buddy read it. This is a call out to Cassidy. Read The House of Always, please. Even though I'm actually still enjoy this one. Because it's a very, yeah, I don't think this will be her favorite in the series, but I still want her to read it so she can finish the series and talk to me about it. So, as I said, this is a call out. You will be publicly named and shamed. I can just tell you that I was like keeping notes in my phone. I'm just like so many of them are just like moments where I'm like, I love them. So this one I do think is my second least favorite. Least favorite was actually The Name of All Things, which is the only book in the series I gave 4 stars. But even then, I think on reread, I would probably give it a 5 stars because I just love these characters so much. And I will reread this series. I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna reread it. Probably next year. And I'm already waiting. Like, while it was a 5 star, it was definitely a weaker 5 star. And that is mostly because it was extremely repetitive in nature, even more so than usual. So obviously the big gimmick of this book is that Kieran, in the first book, he is telling his story, and then another person is telling his story. And they are going back and forth, and then there's also footnotes from a narrator telling us, you know, kind of just adding in little bits of elements about, you know, the world building, magic system, politics, past figures, all of that. In the second book, it's the same, but it's a different person's story. Kieran is still important, but it's not his story in the second book. He is actually just listening to the story. And so it's, again, it's 2 different narrators telling the story. And then in the third book, we kind of go back to Kieran telling the story, but there's a couple of more perspectives added in than we had gotten previously. But this book is so many more. It is a lot of perspectives. So the chapters, so it is a lot of like back and forth to a lot of different people, and it's not necessarily someone telling a story so much as recount as people like after the fact putting it all together, I think. And it's a lot of actually jumping back into the timeline and then back to present day, and then to another person in present day, and then back into people's memories. And it just, for some reason, it was very more obviously repetitive in this one than it has been in previous ones. But I was able to put it aside because, number one, I really wanted to know what the hell was happening. And then number 2, I just love these characters and this world and everything in it so much that I did not care. I think it could work out 2 ways, because I think some people could find it extremely repetitive and get bored of it, or I think you could also find it very, the short, like the nature of like it being like really short memories and all of that. I think you could find, some people might find that really intriguing and draw them further into the book because they want to know what's the next part of this memory. I think it could go either way for you. So that was, but for me, it just leaned on the side of a little too repetitive. But I loved how this book ended, especially. Jen Lyons knows how to write an ending, and I also loved how this book, and also the last book, that I'll be talking about that next month, I suppose, it does a really good job of bringing back things that we've kind of nearly forgotten about. First book, we're getting characters that we haven't really discussed since the first book, and we are getting so much more details about why they haven't been a part of it. And as I said, I just had a really good time overall, and I'm so sad that the series is over for me. But I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, my first 5 star, and I love this series. The last book that I read in February was The Blade Itself by Jo Abercrombie, and this one, I did give it a 4 out of 5 stars, but it is a low 4 star. And to be honest, I wasn't going to give it a 3 stars, but then I remembered I read Half a King by Jo Abercrombie last year, and I gave that a 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm like, no, this isn't worse than that. So I realized that maybe that should have been a 3 star last year, and so now I'm also messing with this year's ratings. Like, I could just start as clean and be like, just give it a 3 stars, but I'm not going to do that, am I? I am intrigued to continue the series because I've heard that the plot gets better in the second book, that this is a lot of setup, getting to know the characters, kind of trying to get attached to them and all of that, and then we actually get like plot in the second one. So I'm optimistic. This book follows mostly three point of views, but there's some other ones like sprinkled in there. And we follow Glocta, who is a torturer. Oh, I can't remember. There's a swordsman who's in the military, and then we also follow Logan, a barbarian from a different country, and they are basically kind of, and yeah, I'm trying to think like what I'm trying to describe, but like there's not really, I mean, it's really just like getting the pieces into place. So like I can't really tell you because I'm like, technically it would spoil the book if I told you this thing. But like that is the plot. So I really can't say much. It's just about putting them all in place for the story to continue, I think. And I enjoyed it well enough. I thought that the writing style was fine. I did find some of like the like cursing a bit weird because it was just like, is this what you think makes grimdark? I'm not. I enjoyed the writing style. It was pretty quick to get into. A good amount of description, but not overly descriptive. And I think well-placed kind of action that you could really understand where all the characters were. And again, I'm intrigued as to where the plot is going. I enjoyed what we have learned about the world so far and also the magic system, but we really don't have too much to go on, and so I am intrigued to see where that goes. And the characters is obviously where most of the talk comes into all of this. And I liked them but did not love them. I think a lot of people talk about how amazing his character work is, and like it wasn't bad, it wasn't that good. I'm intrigued by characters. I'm actually intrigued by Nine Fingers the most, which seems to be an unpopular opinion because everyone loves Galacta. And I was like, I mean, he's interesting enough, but like, not gonna lie, I feel like I kind of understand his character. And they're all like, they're not really supposed to be good people, and I mean, they're not, but also they're not terrible. So yeah, I mean, they were fine. And I'm definitely intrigued to see where the story will go. I enjoyed it well enough, but nothing too special, I don't think. So yeah, so those were the 9 books that I read in February. And this video is gonna be like so late going up because like I just do not want to film this. I hate filming wrap-ups. Yeah, I don't know, I just don't really like them, but I love watching them. So here you are, wrap up. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe. I will see you all in the next time. Bye.